Life teaches you that not everything can be planned, and sometimes moments catch you completely off guard. Those moments can change everything. That night was one of those moments. Eddie had left for a 3-day training program abroad. I was used to being alone in the house, but something about this night felt different. I was sitting in the living room by myself, sipping wine to the soft hum of music. The dim light from the candles flickered around me, keeping me company in the stillness. I had on a thin nightgown, something comfortable. I wanted to feel relaxed, to soak in the quiet and find some semblance of warmth in my solitude. Since Charlie passed 8 years ago, evenings like these had become my escape, my way of confronting the loneliness that had settled into my life. But that night, just when I thought I'd be alone with my thoughts, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found Felipe standing there. For a moment, I froze, my eyes locking on him, trying to process why he was here. He stood in front of me, holding Eddie's files and computer bag. His dark jacket clung perfectly to his broad shoulders, and his slightly tousled hair gave him that effortless charm he always seemed to carry. Felipe had been Eddie's close friend for years, but having him show up at my door like this, it caught me completely off guard. "Felipe, what are you doing here at this hour?" I asked, unable to hide the surprise in my voice. He gave me a polite smile. "Hi, Amy. Eddie and I have been working on a project together. I finished up my part and didn't want to hold on to this any longer, so I thought I'd drop it off." For a moment, I hesitated. "Oh, right, of course. Well, come in, please. It's late, and I wouldn't want you standing out there," I said, stepping aside to let him in. As I closed the door behind him, I suddenly became aware of how I must have looked standing there in the soft candlelight, wearing a nightgown. I tried to brush off the thought, but I caught the way Felipe's eyes lingered on me for just a second before he looked away. When we stepped into the living room, Felipe took in the scene, the candles, the wine, and smiled slightly. "Looks like I'm interrupting a cozy evening, huh?" he said with a hint of humor. "Not at all," I replied quickly, setting my wine glass on the table. "It was just a quiet night. Nights like these helped me ever since Charlie passed. But honestly, I'm glad you came by. I haven't really had the chance to get to know you properly." Felipe nodded, his smile softening. "Yeah, we haven't spent much time together, have we? Even though I've been around Eddie for years. Honestly, I've always wanted to say how much I admire you, what you've done for Eddie, the way you've been there for him. It's incredible." I motioned for him to sit, and as he settled onto the couch, I went to grab another wine glass from the kitchen. When I handed it to him and poured him some wine, his calm and steady demeanor filled the room. It was something about Felipe, his quiet confidence, the way he carried himself. It made it hard not to feel his presence. Between sips of wine and light conversation, the atmosphere started to shift. There was something tangible in the air, something unspoken. Felipe's gaze lingered on me just a little too long, and I could feel my cheeks flush under his attention. It was like he wanted to say something, but the words were stuck somewhere between us. And I was feeling things I hadn't felt in a long time. His attention, the warmth in his eyes, it stirred something deep within me. It was a reminder of how lonely I'd been, how much I'd missed this kind of connection. "Amy," he said finally, his voice soft yet unwavering. "Seeing you like this, alone, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. You're such a strong, remarkable woman, but at the same time, I can feel your loneliness. It doesn't seem fair." His words hit me like a wave, and I wasn't sure how to respond, so I just stared at him. My breath caught in my chest as the room seemed to shrink around us. That moment caught me completely off guard. I didn't know what to say, but the sincerity in Felipe's eyes held me frozen in place. All I could do was smile, though my heart was racing like crazy. "Felipe, I understand what you're trying to say," I finally managed, my voice soft but steady. "But this is my choice. Loneliness sometimes feels like a form of protection." Felipe tilted his head slightly, his eyes filled with deep thought. "Maybe loneliness isn't always the best protection," he said quietly. The air between us was charged with something I couldn't quite put into words. There was a warmth, a pull in Felipe's gaze, and I knew I wasn't imagining it. But should it stay at that? The intensity of the moment both scared and excited me. This story was far from over. And before it spiraled into something wild, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. At the end of the story, your support through comments and likes will mean the world to me. That night, I couldn't shake the warmth in Felipe's eyes from my mind. Talking to someone so genuine, so real, it left an impact I couldn't quite explain. But his words about loneliness stuck with me the most. How could someone like him, a strong, successful man, possibly feel alone? At one point, I couldn't resist. I leaned forward slightly and asked him, "Felipe, why are you alone? I mean, you're 37 years old, tall, charismatic, successful in your career, you're smart, mature. What woman could possibly say no to you?" As the words left my mouth, I found myself locking eyes with him, waiting for his reaction. Felipe's expression grew serious for a moment, though the faintest smile tugged at the corner of his lips. He tilted his head slightly, pausing as if choosing his words carefully. "Amy, sometimes loneliness feels like a choice, but really, it's just not finding the right person," he said, his voice as soft and thoughtful as always. "Maybe a man like me has been too picky, or maybe the right person has always been close, but it's hard to see." His words both startled and shook me. I understood what he was implying, but I was too scared to admit it to myself. I felt the faintest blush creep across my face, but I managed a small smile. "I don't know, Felipe. I think any woman who knows you would be crazy to let you go. A man like you shouldn't be alone." Felipe looked deeply into my eyes for what felt like an eternity. "And you, Amy?" he asked suddenly. "Why are you alone?" "I have to ask. You've been on your own for years. How easy has it been to choose that?" I hesitated, his question catching me completely off guard. "I'm 60 years old, and I've seen loneliness as a kind of safe harbor," I said, my voice faltering slightly. "After Charlie, I just couldn't imagine getting that close to someone again." But sometimes, my words trailed off as my eyes unintentionally met his. There was warmth in his gaze, a pull that I couldn't ignore. At that moment, the tension in the air felt almost tangible. That's how I ended the night with Felipe, and a million unanswered questions swirling in my mind as I lay in bed, the weight of what had happened between us pressed down on me. There was guilt, yes, but also an undeniable excitement. These were feelings I hadn't allowed myself to experience in years. I have to admit, things completely changed after that conversation with Felipe. Days passed, but my mind kept replaying that night, his words, his gaze, they lingered, almost like they had etched themselves into my soul. And no matter how hard I tried to push those feelings down, every time I had the chance to talk to him, they only grew stronger. During the days Eddie was busy with his work, I continued talking to Felipe. Sometimes we grabbed coffee outside, other times, we sat in his car and had long conversations. We spent hours talking on the phone. It felt so natural, so effortless, as if building a connection with him required no effort at all. But with every meeting, there was a feeling deep inside me that grew stronger. This wasn't just friendship, it was so much more than that. Every time I heard Felipe's voice, every time I saw that familiar smile on his face, my heart raced. I had to admit that these feelings weren't just innocent friendship anymore. And the hardest part of it all, keeping it a secret from Eddie. Building such a connection with my son's best friend, was it wrong, or was it just life giving me a second chance? Our last meeting was still vivid in my mind. We were sitting side by side in his car, sipping coffee and talking. That day, we grew closer than ever before, so close that Felipe's gaze lingered on my lips. My breath caught, and my heart pounded like crazy. In that moment, we were so close that the space between us had almost disappeared, but we both pulled back. The magic of that moment hung in the air for a while, before we went our separate ways. After that night, I didn't hear from Felipe again. When his message finally came, it was deeper than I expected. It was just an address and a few words, but the meaning behind them was profound. Amy, meet me at this address tonight at 8. I'll be waiting for you. There's a place I want to show you, something I want to share only with you. When I read those words, it felt like a storm was brewing inside me. My hands trembled, and my heart raced so fast it felt hard to breathe. Every word Felipe wrote carried a weight, a sense of certainty. This was a turning point in our lives. The spark I felt inside was both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew exactly what he meant. This wasn't going to be an ordinary meeting. Should I go? I asked myself, but deep down, I already knew the answer. Preparing for that evening felt like I was transforming into someone else. I wore a sleek, form-fitting black dress. This dress, it was bold, with an off-the-shoulder design and stopped just above my knees, a graceful yet daring look. As I stood in front of the mirror, I realized it had been a long time since I felt this attractive. I let my hair fall in loose waves over my shoulders and applied light makeup. My lips wore a bold red lipstick. I was certain Felipe's eyes wouldn't leave me all night. I'm doing this for him, I whispered to myself, trying to calm the excitement bubbling inside me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just for him. It was for me too. I wanted to feel desirable, passionate, and special again. When I arrived at the address, Felipe was waiting for me in his car. The moment our eyes met, something stirred inside me. He was sitting there, his sleeves slightly rolled up, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel. His eyes carried that familiar warmth and determination. He stepped out of the car and walked over, opening the door for me. "Come on, Amy," he said in a low voice, extending his hand toward me. "There's something special I want to share with you tonight." As I held his hand, I realized my fingers were trembling, but Felipe's reassuring touch somehow calmed me. I got into the car, and we drove off in silence, in the darkness of the night. It was just the two of us. Half an hour later, Felipe stopped the car. "We're here," he said with a faint spark of excitement in his eyes. In front of me was a breathtaking view. Nestled between the mountains was a small house, its lights glowing warmly. The chill of the night air brushed against my face as Felipe gently guided me toward the house. When he opened the door, I was stunned by what I saw. The house, it was a masterpiece. Every detail was exquisite. High ceilings, moonlight streaming through large windows, warm wooden accents, and a glowing fireplace. It felt like it had been designed just for me. The walls were adorned with art and natural tones. A glass coffee table stood elegantly in the center, surrounded by sophisticated furniture. A chic dining table sat perfectly in the middle of the room. Every element was so graceful, so intentional. "Did you design this?" I asked, my eyes filling with emotion. Felipe smiled. "Yes, but it wasn't until now that I've had someone as special as you to show it to," he said. In that moment, I was at a loss for words. Everywhere I looked felt perfectly in tune with my taste. I forgot the inner turmoil I had carried for so long and let myself get swept up in the magic of the moment. Felipe gestured toward the couch in the living room, inviting me to sit. The fireplace was crackling, and the atmosphere felt like something out of a fairy tale. He returned with 2 glasses and a bottle of red wine. As he poured the wine, he leaned slightly toward me. "Amy, I asked you to come here because I know I can't keep holding back what I feel," he said, his voice deep and resolute. My eyes locked onto his. "Felipe," I whispered, but he stopped me. "No, let me say this. This house, this place, this night, it's all because I wanted to share it with you. You've captivated me more than anything else." Taking a sip of wine, feeling the quiet around us, it drew me closer every day. And now, I couldn't deny the pull anymore. In that moment, the tension between us reached its peak. Felipe's eyes said it all, there was no turning back. As he moved closer, I could hardly breathe. This was the moment. I pulled back slightly. "Felipe, before we do this, we need to be sure," I said, my voice uncertain. But Felipe was firm. "I'm sure, Amy." I'm absolutely sure. I didn't know what the night would bring, but I knew this would be a moment I'd never forget. When Felipe's lips finally met mine, everything changed. It was like a spark ignited deep inside me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, awakened again. His kiss was deep, full of emotion, and in that moment, all I wanted was to be close to him. My hands instinctively reached for him, and his grip tightened. It was a moment of pure connection, where nothing else seemed to matter. "Amy," he whispered, his voice low and sincere. "You're beautiful. I can't believe how captivating you are." His words filled me with warmth and affection. I leaned closer to him, my heart racing. "Felipe, you're incredible. Thank you for making me feel this way." My words came from the heart, full of honesty and gratitude. The moment was all-consuming, and I couldn't hold back any longer. The wine glass tipped, but we didn't notice, everything else seemed so far away. It was just us, wrapped up in the intensity of the connection between us. Felipe's hands gently removed my dress, leaving me vulnerable before him. I reached for his shirt, trembling as I carefully unbuttoned it. I couldn't help but be amazed by his strength, his presence. "You're amazing," I whispered, my gaze fixed on him. His smile melted me, leaving me speechless. When we found ourselves in the bedroom, the world outside didn't matter. Felipe leaned over me, his eyes filled with admiration and passion. His touch was gentle yet filled with desire, every movement drawing me closer to him. "Amy," he murmured, his voice tender. "This moment, it's unforgettable." Everything happened so quickly, and in that moment, I felt a warmth like never before. I couldn't help but express the overwhelming feelings within me. I held on to him, lost in the connection we shared. As we reached a point of no return, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment wash over me, knowing that, for now, this moment was ours. We lay together, catching our breath, the silence between us filled with understanding. Felipe turned to face me, his expression serious yet hopeful. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice soft. "What will we tell Eddie? Will this be our secret?" I gently traced his face with my fingers, a quiet smile on my lips. "Felipe," I said softly, "for tonight, I don't want to think about anything else. I just want to be here with you." I reached for my phone and sent Eddie a simple message, "I'm staying at a friend's place tonight. Don't worry about me." As I pressed send, I felt a wave of calm mixed with excitement. That night, we focused on each other, and the questions of the future could wait. But I knew our story wasn't over, it was only just beginning. Stay tuned, because this journey is far from over. If you've made it this far, I know this story has moved you. There's more to come, and I promise you won't want to miss it. Don't forget to follow, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments.